Have you ever noticed how the most profound truths often come wrapped in, well, in the simplest stories? They stick with you, they resonate on so many levels. With that, that actually operate on multiple levels.
Hmm.
Tonight, we're taking a deep dive into five New Testament parables and a couple of related teachings, too, that reveal this fascinating dual nature of what we might call kingdom truth.
That's right. And these aren't just simple fables. These parables, these speak to individual hearts and historical circumstances simultaneously.
How so?
Well, they address your personal transformation,
Okay.
guiding your inner life, but also they reveal the trajectory of entire nations, offering this profound commentary on events unfolding right then.
So here's our plan for this deep dive. First, we'll explore those timeless truths about personal responsibility, forgiveness, stewardship, the lessons for us individually.
The personal takeaways.
Exactly. Then we're going to peel back an astonishing second layer. We'll uncover their stunning precision as political prophecies about first century Judea.
And that's where it gets really eye-opening.
Get ready for some genuine aha moments, because these stories are far more complex than they might first appear. Okay, let's start with a story almost everyone knows, often called the Prodigal Son. It's from Luke 15. But there's a nuance here you might not have considered, right? About the word prodigal itself.
Absolutely. The Greek word ashutos, it goes beyond just, rebellion. It literally means wastefully or recklessly. It really highlights the squandering of something valuable.
Squandering. Okay.
And this story, it's not just about two brothers and a father. It's really about three distinct characters. And look, if you've ever been in a family or even just struggled with your own choices, you've probably been all three at different times.
That's such a good point. You see yourself in each one. Now, the younger son asking for his inheritance. That wasn't just about money, was it?
No, not at all. Culturally, that request was, well, it was essentially saying, I wish you were dead. The Greek word used, katalu, implies a complete dissolution of the relationship, tearing it down, severing ties.
Wow, okay.
And when the text says he wasted his substance with riotous living, the word there is diascorpius. It suggests scattering something, like seed thrown to the wind, is an irretrievable loss. Gone. Forever.
What strikes me as incredibly, almost brutally honest is his first thought when he's starving. Feeding pigs. It isn't, oh, I've sinned against God.
No, not
Essentially, Luke 15 so on and says, as he came to himself, is huton elthon, literally came into himself. His repentance starts with his stomach, right? Not his soul. How brutally honest is that?
It's so human.
Sometimes we find our way back not because of some grand spiritual moment, but because we're just tired of eating pig slop.
It's that raw moment of self-realization. But then, watch the father's response. He saw his son while he was still far off, makron, a considerable distance.
What does that tell us?
It tells us the father was looking. Every single day, you have to imagine. Actively hoping, watching. And the verb describing his compassion is spleknizomai.
Ah, that word.
Yeah, it refers to being moved in your inner organs, your guts.
Mhm.
This is visceral, gut-wrenching love, not just sentiment.
And the cultural detail here is so powerful. The father ran Dramhun. Patriarchs in the Middle East, they just didn't run. It violated their dignity.
Exactly. But his love for his son completely tossed social conventions aside. Love broke all the rules there.
It really did.
But then you have the older brother. When he hears the music and dancing, Sifinia Kaichodam, he has to ask a servant what's happening.
He's clueless.
He's physically present, right? In his father's house, doing all the right things, but he's emotionally completely absent from the celebration, cut off by his own bitterness.
And his complaint to the father says it all.
It does. This son of yours, Kuyosudus, not my brother, he linguistically severs the relationship right there.
Ouch.
And his accusation, you never gave me even a young goat, Arafon, to celebrate with my friends. It's really telling. What friends? If he had friends, wouldn't they be there? He's isolated by his own resentment.
The bitterness he couldn't even see, maybe?
Until his brother's return suddenly exposed it.
Yeah. But the beauty is how the father responds. Tenderly. To both. He uses the term tenon, child, for both sons, showing he loves them equally, meeting them right where they are, in their mess.
And the real aha moment here, I think, is that the father's plaknizomai, that gut-level, actively searching love, it doesn't differentiate between the spectacular failure, the katalu, the complete dissolution from the younger son,
Right.
and the insidious self-imposed isolation of the older brother's bitterness. Both extremes are met by this love that actively seeks to restore relationship, not just, tick a box for forgiveness.
That's powerful. Okay, moving from relationship and forgiveness. let's consider responsibility. The parable of the talents, Matthew 25. A man traveling apodemon entrusts servants with talenta.
Mm-hmm.
Now, get this. These weren't small gifts. A talenton was enormous. Roughly 20 years' wages for a laborer. We're talking massive responsibilities.
Huge sums. Precisely. And the first two servants, they immediately, Argasanto, they worked, they traded, they put the money to use, and they doubled it.
Okay, they were active.
Very active. But the third servant, he just dug in the earth, or Phyrexin, and hid his master's money. He didn't just put it in a safe. He buried it like something dead, rendered it completely useless.
And when the master returns, his praise for the faithful servants is identical. Well done, good and faithful servant. Tu lagate kai pist.
Right. Same praise for different amounts, doubled.
Which highlights it's about the integrity of the stewardship, isn't it? Not the sheer size of the gift or the return.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But what's truly remarkable is the fearful servant's excuse. I knew you were a hard man, sklerosanthropos. His distorted, ungenerous view of the master totally paralyzed him.
He created a narrative in his head.
He did. The Greek phobethes, being afraid, shows how fear became his justification for oknēria, which isn't just passive laziness, it's active negligence disguised as caution.
No, that's interesting. Active negligence.
Yeah, and the masker calls him poneros kaionoros, wicked and lazy. Poneros suggests moral corruption, while oknēros means shrinking back from duty. Inaction was, in essence, an act of betrayal.
So inaction as active betrayal, how might someone listening, unknowingly be doing that today? What's the practical takeaway?
Well, the key insight isn't just general accountability. It's that our fearful inaction, that oknēria is, in God's eyes, a morally corrupt betrayal, poneros, that leads to active loss. The talent is taken away, rule forcibly removed.
So it forces us to ask.
All right, is our caution actually a cover for a distorted, ungenerous view of God? A view that's crippling our potential. Our gifts atrophy when they're unused. What we don't develop, we eventually lose. Time doesn't excuse it. It actually compounds the negligence.
Oh, wow. Okay. Let's turn to another really insightful story. The wheat and tares, Matthew 13. Farmer sows good seed, kalon sperma. Then an enemy, ecthros, secretly sows weeds zizania, darnel among the wheat. And the trick is, this darnel looks almost identical to wheat until harvest time. You literally can't tell them apart while they're growing.
A brilliant illustration of, a complex reality. The servants want to go pull the weeds immediately. Makes sense.
Sure, rid of the bad stuff.
But the owner says, no, afit. Let them alone. Let them grow together until the harvest, the kipirimes. Jesus was teaching patience. Patience with complexity.
And afit, that's the same word for forgive.
It is. There's grace even in the waiting. Because premature separation might damage ekrizo, uproot the genuine wheat, along with the weeds. It tells us the most dangerous false believers often look identical to the real ones.
Until tested.
Until testing reveals the difference.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's a powerful idea. What stands out to me there is, just realizing we live alongside people whose hearts we can't fully see. And that requires immense patience from us, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Our job isn't to be judge and jury. It's to keep growing as wheat ourselves and trust God to handle the sorting when the time comes. It's a call to patience with the messiness in our communities, in the world, even in ourselves. Don't jump to conclusions.
All right. From the same chapter, Matthew 13 again, Jesus compared the kingdom to a kokon synopis, a grain of mustard seed, microteron, smaller than all other seeds.
The tiniest seed they knew.
Yet when it's grown, it becomes meson, greater than the herbs, and actually becomes a dendron, a tree.
And what's remarkable there is that mustard plants, sinopi, they are supposed to become trees, dendron. They're shrubs, maybe large shrubs, but not trees.
So the kingdom grows in ways that defy natural expectations. Parafusion against nature.
Exactly, it breaks the mold. And this dendron suggests something substantial enough for birds, patina, to kataskonush in its branches. That word means more than just resting. It means to settle down, make a permanent dwelling, to launch there.
That captures the incredibly inclusive nature of Christianity so beautifully, doesn't it? This tiny, almost insignificant start grows into a refuge for all sorts of people.
It does, wonderfully. The kingdom, starting with, a Jewish rabbi and a handful of followers, grows into something providing permanent refuge. A home for all kinds of people, different denominations, cultures, backgrounds, all finding katapausis, rest in the same tree.
The tree is big enough for everyone.
Big enough for many different kinds of birds, yeah. Implying this diverse, welcoming home. The essential peace believers find in Christ transcends our specific little branch, you could say.
That's a profound thought. Now, here's a really interesting detail. How does God's kingdom grow, if not through, the usual ways?
Right. Kingdoms usually start big, where they project power, maintain themselves through by force, conquest.
Mm-hmm.
God's kingdom starts micros, small, almost invisibly.
Yeah.
And it grows through diaconia, service, thesia, sacrifice, and agapai,
Mm-hmm.
love. It spreads not by military might, but by klesis, by invitation. It's a completely different model of power.
Okay, so that's a huge challenge for our individual lives, right? Forgiveness, stewardship, patience. But here's where these stories truly become multidimensional. We're about to take these same parables and teachings and peel back an astonishing second layer,
Right.
revealing them not just as personal guides, but as precise prophecies about the unfolding history of Jesus' own nation.
And this dual nature is just crucial. It demonstrates the comprehensive scope of kingdom truth. It's transforming hearts, yes, but it's also directing the course of human history. These aren't just moral lessons. They're also, in a sense, historical roadmaps.
Okay, let's revisit the wheat and tares. What's truly fascinating is its prophetic meaning when you view it as describing the coexistence of Christians and Zealots, those fiercely nationalistic Jewish revolutionaries in first century Judaism, say from 30 to 70 CE.
Exactly. Both movements grew from the same fertile soil of Jewish messianic expectation. They were both waiting for God to act, but they were heading in completely opposite directions.
How so?
Christians toward suffering love, agape. Zealots toward violent resistance, Biazu trying to force the kingdom into existence. Jesus was preparing his followers for this really difficult period where true and false responses to God's kingdom would be completely intermingled.
Both passionate, both convinced they were right.
Absolutely. Both convinced they were following God's will and growing side by side in that same volatile environment of Jewish hope and Roman occupation.
So what does this mean for the harvest mentioned in Matthew 13:30? The separation.
Well, the harvest seems to represent that painful, traumatic separation that occurred through the events of the Jewish War, 66-70 CE, and then later culminating after the Bar Kokhba revolt around 136 CE.
And the historical aftermath backs this up.
It really does. What makes this interpretation so compelling is that after 136 CE, Rabbinic Judaism, the form that survives, systematically abandoned the apocalyptic framework. That intense expectation of God's dramatic, world-ending intervention, it largely disappeared from mainstream Judaism.
Which had characterized both early Christianity and the Zealots.
Precisely. The harvest had, in effect, definitively separated these competing interpretations of Jewish hope and how God would establish his kingdom. The paths diverged completely.
Now let's look at a chilling fulfillment of another teaching. Revelation 19, it describes the period right after the temple's destruction in 70 CE. Zealot strongholds like Masada were still holding out.
Right. And Jesus' warning back in Matthew 26, all who take the sword will perish by the sword. It found its most chilling fulfillment at Masada in April 73 CE.
What happened there?
Rather than face capture by the Roman legions, the Zealot defenders, led by Eleazar Binier, chose mass suicide. They literally perished by their own swords. It was the final tragic culmination of that sword principle Jesus warned against.
The tragic irony is just complete, isn't it?
It really is. Those who rejected the Prince of Peace, choosing violent resistance instead, ultimately died by the very weapons they had chosen over his offer of life. It's a stark, historical echo of Jesus' words.
Okay, the wedding feast parable in Matthew 22. The guest without wedding clothes. You're saying this also extends beyond 70 CE to a later devastating historical crisis.
Yes, I think this man finds his ultimate historical fulfillment, if you will, in the Bar Kokhba revolt of 132-136 CE, another massive Jewish uprising against Rome.
How does that connection work?
Well, understanding Jewish wedding customs helps. Hosts often provided appropriate wedding garments for their guests. So showing up without one wasn't usually about poverty. It was seen as a deliberate insult to the host. Now, Simon Bar Kokhba came in his own name, claiming to be the Messiah, as Jesus predicted someone would in John 5, and he was received by the Hebrew nation on a massive scale. The historian Dio Cassius tells us the revolt involved almost 1,000 villages, 50 fortresses. The death toll was staggering. Maybe 580,000 rebels.
So they were essentially trying to crash the wedding party, but on their own terms, not the hosts.
Exactly. They attempted to enter God's kingdom, as they saw it, through military force and their own self-proclaimed Messiah, rather than accepting the freely provided wedding garment of Christ's righteousness.
And there's another layer here.
I think so. If we connect this to Jesus' warning in Matthew 12 about an unclean spirit returning to find a house swept and garnished, but empty.
Oh, okay.
For many interpreters, after 70 CE, The Jewish nation had been, in a sense, cleansed by tragedy, but remained spiritually vacant, having rejected Christ's righteousness. The Bar Kokhba revolt could be seen as the return of that spirit of violent nationalism, only more destructive this time.
So they're military regalia instead of wedding clothes.
Represents that fundamental incompatibility between violent revolution and the peaceful kingdom feast. They were cast into outer darkness, as the parable says, historically fulfilled in the catastrophic defeat that left Judea virtually depopulated, a devastating end.
What's truly fascinating, going back a step, is the historical significance of the similarity you mentioned between early Christian and Zealot apocalyptic beliefs. They seem so aligned on some core expectations.
We really did. On the surface, both movements expected imminent divine intervention, God establishing his kingdom, the faithful being vindicated. The crucial difference was method.
Right. Violence versus endurance.
Zealots sought to force the kingdom through violence, biazu. Christians awaited it through faithful endurance, hypomone. And what's so striking is that after 136 CE, Rabbinic Judaism, rising from the ashes of Bar Kokhba, systematically rejected that whole apocalyptic framework.
They moved away from end-time speculation.
Completely. The Mishnah, the later Talmudic literature, they show this deliberate turn away from eschatology towards halakha practical law, ethical living in the here and now.
Which really validates Jesus' wheat and tares parable again, doesn't it? The separation truly happened with lasting implications.
It absolutely does. The harvest of 7136 CE definitively separated these movements. Early Christianity kept its eschatological hope, but universalized it beyond ethnic boundaries. Post-70 Judaism, in the mainstream, largely abandoned apocalypticism for scholarly interpretation and communal survival. The tares were truly separated from the wheat in the course of history.
Wow. These parables and teachings, they really reveal Jesus as both pastor and prophet, don't they? Addressing individual hearts with such profound wisdom, while also accurately predicting the political trajectory of his nation.
Exactly. The personal applications, they remain timelessly relevant. We still need forgiveness, faithful stewardship, patience with complexity, inclusive love. All of that is right there.
But recognizing their prophetic precision adds this incredible weight to the moral teachings. It underscores that these aren't just, nice stories. They're truth with historical teeth.
Well said.
When we see how accurately Jesus seemed to predict the coexistence and eventual separation of these competing movements, the devastating consequences of choosing violence over peace, and the ultimate rejection of his kingship through these military alternatives,
we're confronted with a teacher whose words carry both profound pastoral comfort and undeniable prophetic authority. That dual nature shows that God's kingdom operates simultaneously in individual hearts and in human history.
Personal transformation and political prophecy aren't separate boxes.
Not at all. They're different, intertwined dimensions of the same comprehensive truth about how God works in the world. It's all connected.
So, as you reflect on this deep dive, maybe consider this. How might understanding these historical and prophetic layers of these ancient stories change how you approach challenges in your own life today? Whether there's personal or, societal? And maybe ask, what talents might you be holding back, perhaps out of fear, that could be serving a much larger purpose in the world around you?
And that raises another important question, I think. When you're faced with complexity, maybe in your community or in the wider world, are you tempted to prematurely judge and separate, like the servants wanted to do with the tares?
Right. Or do you try to embrace the patience?
Exactly. The patience and the inclusive love that these parables so powerfully encourage. What kind of tree, ultimately, are you helping to grow? One that offers shelter or one that keeps people out?